Title: Villain Kindergarten Wearing Book. Author: Muse Hishu. Edible Guide: this article is purely fictitious. It is mainly an everyday article selling cute and falling in love. Everything in the article depends on the author's own brain to supplement, don't take it seriously. Especially kindergarten __. Shen Muan is a teacher in a kindergarten, and he likes to read some old scriptures to get happiness from it. Suddenly one day, his world merged with the world in the book. He found that all the kindergarten children who had transferred from school were villains in the novel. Villain number 1, with a bun's face, a little milky voice, blushing when he holds a hand with a girl. Villain number 2, who likes small animals and doesn't like talking, will send him a little heart. Villain number 3, who likes beautiful princess dresses, will tell the children fairy tales in a serious manner. Shen Muan is stupid. Are these milky dolls really the villains in the book, cruel and cruel? Too soft? Thinking of their future, Shen Muan made up his mind to teach them to stay away from mental retardation, so that it would not be the same as the plot in the book. One day, Shen Muan pulled a juvenile villain with a serious face and said to him, "You can't just charge a girl's meal card with 5 million in the future." A certain president who heard only the last 3 words said, "My dear, I called you 5 million carry." Shen Muan? He seems to know who this little guy learned to play 5 million. Edible Guide: this article is purely fictitious. It is mainly about daily essays selling cute and falling in love. The kindergarten-related things are all up to the author's own brain to supplement, don't take it seriously. Content tag: a special liking for Tianwen modern overhead wearing books. Search keywords: protagonist, Shen Muan supporting role. Others, one sentence introduction, can't do anything except sell cute idea, friendship and family affection are an indispensable part of life. The user you dialed is turned off. There was a mechanical female voice over the phone, and Shen Muan was a little confused when she heard this voice. The head of the kindergarten just told him that a new kid would come to Rose's class today, but the phone was hung up as soon as he finished saying this. Shen Muan thought that he had hung up accidentally, so he dialed back, only that the other party was turned off. Therefore, his current situation is very embarrassing. He knows nothing except knowing that a new kid is coming today. Shen Muan feels that this is the biggest problem he has encountered since working for a year. Shen Muan first went to the archives to check the information, but found nothing, then went to ask other teachers, no one knew about it. So this kid decided to come to school temporarily? Shen Muan felt a bit of a headache, but he couldn't ignore it. He had to let other teachers take care of the children in the class and waited at the door of the kindergarten. Seeing today's scorching sun, Shen Muan was a little worried, not knowing how long he would have to wait. He hid in a shady place at the door, with a mobile phone in his hand, and made a call to the principal from time to time, but the principal's cell phone was still turned off. About 10 minutes later, a red Ferrari stopped at the door of the kindergarten. At this time, no matter who it is, it will be attracted by that Ferrari. It was the first time that Shen Muan saw such a luxury car up close. He sighed and his eyes fell on the man who came out of the driving seat. The man was wearing a red suit, his hair was all fixed behind his head with hairspray, and he looked a little bit fierce. The man walked to the co-pilot, opened the door and lifted a little boy in a white shirt and black overalls down. The boy seemed to be accustomed to the man's actions a long time ago. After the man put him down, he tidied up his clothes very skillfully. The corner of Shen Muan's eyes twitched slightly. This is probably the reason why my father is taking the child, and it will be fine if he is alive. Although he wanted to complain, Shen Muan walked over with a smile on his face and asked, "Hello. Excuse me, is this the kid who is going to enroll today? I am the teacher of the Rose class, Shen Muan." The man nodded slightly, and gently pushed the little boy standing next to him. Shen Muan knelt down / smiled and stretched out his hand to greet the little boy. "Hello, my name is Shen Muan, you can call me Teacher Anan, what's your name?" The little boy looked at Shen Muan shyly, put his little hand on Shen Mu's, and introduced himself with a little milky voice. My name is Xia Ruzi, and my nickname is Zhizi. I am 3 years old this year. Hello, only. Shen Muan held Xia Ruzi's soft little hand, and his irritability because of the heat disappeared instantly. This kid is so cute. After getting to know each other with the children, Shen Muan habitually showed a bright smile to the boy's parents. Mr. Xiao is going to visit the kindergarten? I can. Before Shen Muan finished speaking, he was interrupted by the man in the red suit. My last name is Xiao. Sorry. Shen Muan was taken aback for a moment, and could only smile awkwardly. So what is the identity of this man? My name is Fang Su, my only uncle. Fang Su glanced at Shen Muan lazily, and didn't get angry because of Shen Muan's misunderstanding. He would always be more tolerant of good-looking people. When he heard this name, Shen Muan felt a little familiar. His eyes fell on the lovely and loving only, and he almost subconsciously felt that he was overhearted. There are so many people with the same name and surname in the world, and he feels familiar with it, just like in a novel he read before. The villains in it seem to be similar to their big and small names. Then Mr. Fang is going to visit the kindergarten? Take a look at the place where you will only go to school in the future. Shen Muan shakes off the messy associations in his mind and invites again. Generally speaking, at this time, parents will immediately agree that they need to understand their children's future learning environment. Sometimes, without waiting for the teacher to make it, they will take the initiative to make this request. But Fang Su hesitated. He actually wanted to see the environment of this kindergarten, but he was more fierce and afraid that he would scare the children. Fang Su has been the object of fear since he was a child. His parents liked children very much, but because within a few miles of him, no children dared to visit his house. Except for the nephew who has been watching from childhood to this age, Fang Suming said that he is really not welcomed by children. Xia Ruzi pulled Shen Muan's sleeve as if he had something to tell him. Shen Muan clung to his ears very simply. Xia Ruzi explained it roughly. Shen Muan was surprised when he looked at the young man. Although his face was a little bit more fierce, his voice was a little louder, and somewhat informal, he could feel that this man still liked children. Shen Muan thought for a while, and added, "It's class time, and the children are all in the classroom, just to show you around." With these words from Shen Muan, Su just nodded. He looked at Xia Ruzi happily holding the new teacher's hand, relieved a lot. After all, I changed kindergarten this time because Xia Ruzi didn't like going to a kindergarten teacher. Fang Su deliberately fell behind by 2 steps, followed Shen Muan and Zhizi, watching the interaction between the two people, and felt that his sister was finally reliable for a while this time, and the new kindergarten she found was not bad. While introducing the situation of the kindergarten, Shen Muan took this 9-year-old visit and saw that she was so lively and not afraid of life. Shen Muan was very happy, but she didn't know if she would cry when the parents left. Many children are very excited when they are accompanied by their parents when they first enter the kindergarten. When the parents leave, they start to cry. It's okay to cry alone, but in kindergartens, it is easy to have a chain reaction. As long as a child cries, it is very likely that the children in the same class will be infected and cry together. This is truly desperate. But from the current situation, only the performance is still very good. It seems that he will not cry, should it? Fang Su followed Shen Muan through the entire kindergarten. Although it is not particularly top-notch, it can be seen that this kindergarten is still very attentive. After visiting the kindergarten, Shen Muan took her into the class with her, and introduced her to the other children. Everyone expressed a warm welcome to the newcomer. After a while, the other children were surrounded by them. Seeing that only quickly merged in, Shen Muan's last worry disappeared. Just when Shen Muan took his cell phone and walked outside the classroom to exchange contact information with his uncle, he suddenly received a call from the principal. "Hey, principal, I have received a new kid," Shen Muan said as soon as he got on the phone. The principal on the phone was taken aback for a while and asked, "What kid? They haven't arrived yet." Now it was Shen Muan's turn to be stunned. If it doesn't arrive, then what is the only situation that he picks up? Shen Muan subconsciously looked at the boy playing there, and the little boy showed him a bright smile. There was an unknown premonition in Shen Muan's heart. The author has something to say. The plot of this article is purely fictitious, it's all made up by me, don't take it seriously, this is just a daily cute article. My file target equals _ blank. The days when you sell cute in the arms of the villain to survive quick, whereas a little fat who is accidentally bound by the system, he can't do anything except sell cute. After seeing those big villains, his heart was instantly ashamed. The mission and his own life are definitely important, so he chooses to sell cute and pretend to be tender. As long as he is cute enough, he can eat and wait to die. Thanks for watching, please subscribe. After talking on the phone with the principal, Shen Muan subconsciously looked for Fang Su, his uncle, but he was gone. Isn't it already gone? Shen Muan suppressed the anxiety in his heart, and quickly ran to the door of the kindergarten. No one, and no car. Master, has the car that just parked over there already left? Shen Muan ran to ask the uncle in the security room. The uncle was sitting peacefully with a thermos in his hand. It's been 5 or 6 minutes. What happened? Uncle asked. The child was sent to the wrong kindergarten. Shen Muan sighed. Although some parents secretly took advantage of the children's fun before, they would greet the teacher before leaving. If they were satisfied, they would go through the formalities with other teachers. I didn't expect that today the Mr. Fang who came here did not take the usual path at all. He left without saying a word, no formalities and no contact information. If it weren't for the other person's gesture and the luxury car, Shen Muan would have some doubts whether he threw the child here on purpose. It's no wonder that Shen Muan thinks badly. In the past, parents threw their children at the entrance of the kindergarten. When the police found someone, the parents were reluctant to take it back. Hearing what Shen Muan said, the uncle security guard couldn't sit still, and jumped up anxiously. Oh, what should we do then? Should we call the police? Don't worry, I will first ask the child if he remembers his home phone number. If he doesn't remember, it won't be too late to call the police. Although Shen Muan was a little anxious, he calmed down quickly. Even if the delivery is wrong, he will come in the afternoon. Pick up the child. It was the first time to engage in such a big oolong, which made Shen Muan feel very complicated, and life, really colorful. Shen Muan went to look for only one, but he only asked 3 questions. There is no way, Shen Muan can only contact his brother who is a policeman, tell him all the information he knows, and ask him to help contact the people in his family. Only grabbing Shen Muan's clothes and ignoring the other children, he asked nervously, Teacher Anan, did I make a mistake? Shen Muan was stunned when she heard Zizi's words. No, why do you have such thoughts? Shen Muan sensed that Zay's anxiety picked him up, only wrapped his neck, and leaned his small head against Shen Muan. Then why are you looking for mom and dad? In the impression of Zizi, the teacher would only find his parents if he did bad things. He looked a little nervous holding Shen Muan by the collar, but he didn't know what he did wrong. Only nothing was wrong, only very good. Shen Muan sensed that only his emotions were wrong, and patiently explained to him why he wanted to contact his family. It's just a small mistake. Uncle forgot to enroll in school and left. Shen Muan didn't know how to tell it, but his uncle sent him to the wrong kindergarten, and because of the lack of information, he just regarded him as a kid who was going to school today. Let's not say that he told him, I just couldn't understand it. He was afraid that he would be sad just after hearing it. Uncle is too careless. Only his cheeks bulged, very upset. The last time my grandfather asked Uncle to get matcha, the result was mustard. Uncle is always like this. He just said angrily. Shen Muan didn't know how to answer the conversation for a while. he always felt that the mustard incident should be deliberate. I was only still angry here. Shen Muan realized that the time agreed by the principal and the parents of the new children was approaching, so she said to me, the teacher is going to pick up other children. Only now, can you play with other children? Don't. He just hugged Shen Muan's neck aggrievedly, almost strangling him. The time was about to come, but he refused to let go. Shen Muan had no choice but to take him with him to pick up the new children. The new kid is also a boy named Chu Si-yuan, about the same age as a boy, and the grandson of the principal's friend. When Shen Muan came to the door of the kindergarten with his arms in his arms, Chu Si-yuan had already arrived. He followed a man with a reluctant expression, as if he was tantrums because of something. The man next to Chu Si-yuan was tall and tall, wearing a black suit, frowning slightly. His aura was very strong when he looked at it. The handsome face of the man showed a slight displeasure, and the expressions of the young and the young were extremely similar, which looked particularly interesting. Chu Si-yuan, stop messing around. The man didn't seem to notice that Shen Muan and Zhizi were approaching. His attention was focused on Xiao Doubting, who couldn't kick his knee when he jumped. Chu Yi looked at this little devil and felt annoyed. His brother-in-law had something to deal with recently, and his parents were out traveling again, so they had to throw this little guy to take care of him. Originally Chu Yi thought it was just a trivial matter, but in the end, he didn't expect such a small beanie to be so difficult to do. Because of going to kindergarten today, Chu Si-yuan had already made trouble at home once, and Chu also suppressed it and brought him to kindergarten, only to have a temper again. Excuse me, are you Mr. Chu and Chu Si-yuan? Shen Muan saw the stalemate between the big and the small, so he took the initiative to break the deadlock. Chu Yi and Chu Si-yuan looked at Shen Muan at the same time. I'm Shen Muan, the teacher of the Rose class of Chuntianhua Kindergarten, hello. Shen Muan smiled brightly at the two of them. The only person he held in his arms was just a glance at the little peas on the ground, and turned his head with a cold snort. He slipped into Shen Muan's arms. This is the only one, do you just need to get to know Si-yuan? Before he could only speak, Chu Si-yuan spoke the first sentence of today, I know him, he was peeing his pants in the restaurant last time. Chu Yi, this kid shouldn't be allowed to speak. Shen Muan, is the kid now speaking so cruelly? He only heard Chu Si-yuan's words and his body stiffened. He smashed his head. The original Bun's face became rounder because of anger. He waved his limbs and wanted to go to the ground, but he was held tightly by Shen Muan. Can only argue verbally, I didn't. I said that water was spilled on me last time. Hey, I don't believe it. Chu Si-yuan turned his head, as if he didn't believe in the only one. The more I thought about it, the more angry I became, the more angry I became, the more anxious I was, and finally I cried without holding back a wow. Shen Muan blinked and met Chu Yi's eyes. The two of them didn't seem to keep up with the plot of the two cubs. Seeing only crying, Chu also wanted to comfort but didn't know what to do, so he picked up Chu Si-yuan directly, apologize, you can't say that to others. While coaxing her, Shen Muan watched Chu Yi's movements and quickly said, Mr. Chu, you can't carry the children's clothes like this, you will strangle your neck. Chu Yi glanced at Chu Si-yuan, who was still struggling in his hands and wanted to go down, and was silent for 2 seconds before letting him go. Teacher Anan can't talk to a bad boy. She just cried and shouted, and both hands wrinkled Shen Muan's shirt. I'm not a bad boy. When Chu Si-yuan heard only these words, he instantly became unhappy. He ran to Shen Muan's side and hugged Shen Muan's thigh and said, Don't hold him. You hold me. I don't wet the bed since I was 1 year old. Chu Si-yuan's words were like the last straw that crushed the camel, and he only cried even harder. Shen Muan could only coax this one while coaxing the other one. And Chu Yi, the uncle of one of the bear children, stood there not knowing what to do. He would rather go intrigue with the people in the mall than watch these two children who are a little unclear about their words quarrel. Not only Chu felt terrible, but Shen Muan felt a terrible headache. The little kid didn't listen to persuasion at all when he quarreled. If it weren't for fear that these two little guys would fight, Shen Muan would want to let them go and make them quarrel, especially Chu Si-yuan, who was holding his pants. He always felt that his pants would be ripped off by this little guy. Up! Shut up! Chu Yi couldn't bear it, and said sharply. The two little doubtings closed their mouths at the same time, and only drilled straight into Shen Muan's arms. Chu Si-yuan hugged his legs tighter, and the atmosphere suddenly cooled down. None of the two little guys was willing to take care of the fierce man behind him. When Shen Muan saw this scene, he suddenly felt that if the kindergarten had a stricter teacher, it seemed good. After Chu Yi finished speaking, he regretted it a little. He was afraid that these two little guys would cry harder, but he didn't expect to be shocked. Chu Yi heaved a sigh of relief and looked at Shen Muan, who had become a human-shaped climbing frame, and found that the other party was actually smiling at him. In this case, the man who can still laugh. Chu also felt that this man must be no ordinary person. The author has something to say, Chu Yi, if it doesn't work, just fight. On Le Ji Yuzhen, when after the system went bankrupt, the general and I went to he copywriting, in the 16th year that Luo Chuchen passed, the system suddenly went bankrupt and ran away, leaving only a debuff that would die if he didn't get close to the child of luck. He made a decisive move and slid back to the capital with a baggage on his back, only to find that the little bamboo horse who had been bullied at the time had become a general with a windy robe, and meeting him was a hug. Luo Chuchen blushed and thought about it, but suddenly saw the prompt, drops, health plus 10% then, hug again. Life is worry-free, and there is a bamboo horse as a backing. Luo Chuchen's small life when he learns to paint with his teacher has a comfortable life. It's just why, the former target of the strategy suddenly came to Beijing to confess to him. Before Luo Chuchen had time to refuse, he found that his little bamboo horse's eyes were gradually fierce. Luo Chuchen? Listen to my explanation. CP, gentle and affectionate general attack X and Ziahe accept. After Shen Muan finished the phone call, Shen Fangqi immediately asked someone to check the contact information of the child's family. There are not many Ferraris in their city, so it is not difficult to check, plus knowing the adult and the child's contact information. The name is easier to find. Soon Shen Fangqi found out Fang Su's contact information, and he picked up the phone and dialed it. The phone rang a few times and it was connected. Hello, is it Mr. Fang Su? Shen Fangqi asked. I am. Fang Su was a little surprised to see that it was a strange call. What's the matter? I'm from the Zhejiang City Public Security Bureau. Teacher Shen Muan from Chuntianhua Kindergarten contacted us and said that you sent your nephew, Xia Ruzi, to the wrong kindergarten. Although Shen Fangqi thought it was a little weird, it's not uncommon for this kind of thing to happen. But generally it won't come to them. Fang Su on the other side was silent for a few seconds, and said, You are a liar. Then he hung up the phone. Shen Fangqi, he glanced at his cell phone, switched to a landline silently, and called. But he was hung up as soon as he rang twice, and Shen Fangqi suddenly wondered if he should say that this person had a strong sense of defense. It should be said that he was careless, even the kindergarten of the children could make a mistake. Shen Fangqi made 2 more phone calls, and found that the other party had blocked him, and there was no way, so he sent Fang Su's contact information to Shen Muan. Let his brother contact him, so he won't be treated as a scam. Shen Muan didn't have time to look at the phone at this time. He was now struggling to mediate the 2 children. Fortunately, Chu Si-yuan didn't cooperate at all, he was very stubborn. Chu Yi kept looking in his eyes, and his brows were getting tighter. How did Chu Si-yuan develop such a temperament? Chu Yi didn't understand that his brother and his sister-in-law were both gentle people. It is estimated that Chu Si-yuan inherited his grandfather's temperament. In fact, Chu Yi's parents always felt that his little grandson was exactly the same as Chu Yi when he was a child, but Chu Yi didn't think Chu Siyuan was like him at all. He didn't remember what he was like when he was a child. But he firmly believed that he would not follow this little carrot head. Finally, the two little guys calmed down slowly, and Shen Muan was a little afraid that the two of them would suddenly say something astonishing, and ignited the flames of war again. Then he asked, "There are a lot of small animals in the kindergarten. Would you like to visit with the teacher?" The children are very curious, and they seem to have a natural fondness for animals. As soon as Shen Muan's words came out, 3 pairs of eyes looked at him at the same time. Why is it a triple-double? Because Chu Yi was also curious about the little animals raised in the kindergarten, Shen Muan felt the anticipation in his eyes and couldn't help laughing. Then come with me, okay? Let's go see the little animals together. Shen Muan said with a smile. Chu Yi always felt that Shen Muan's smile was a little weird, but he didn't know what was wrong. Seeing Shen Muan leading the 2 little guys forward, Chu Yi immediately followed. "Mizanin, what kind of animals are kept in the kindergarten?" he asked only curiously. Although Chu Siyuan was also very curious, he did not speak, only this question made him focus on Shen Muan, wanting to learn from him what kind of animals are raised in the kindergarten. "I'll know when I go." Shen Muan couldn't walk with his back straight because he was holding the 2 little guys, so he could only bend over and watch the 2 little guys to prevent them from falling. Chu Yi saw that his brows were slightly frowned, and he went forward and hugged both Chu and Chu Siyuan, one in each hand. The bodies of the 2 little guys stiffened. They looked at each other and pretended that nothing happened. The little mouths that were originally only small mouths kept talking, but now their breathing has slowed down. Chu Siyuan also showed reluctance, but he didn't dare to mess around with Chu Yi now, and he couldn't lose face in front of Xia Ruzi. This is the most important thing. Shen Muan was empty-handed, he didn't quite understand why Chu Yi suddenly picked up these 2 little guys. "It's too slow, you can lead the way." Chu Yi casually found an excuse. "Like this?" Shen Muan's eyes fell on only Chu Siyuan's short legs, nodding silently. "Walking slowly is normal, after all, the leg length is not allowed." Chu Siyuan shrank his legs subconsciously and glanced at Shen Muan vigilantly. He just didn't notice that it was wrong. He was reaching out for a hug to Shen Muan at this time. He didn't want to be hugged by Chu Siyuan's uncle. Shen Muan pretended not to see only the outstretched hand, and he continued walking forward with Chu Yi. Although there were 2 more pendants on his body, they did not affect Chu Yi's activities at all. At this time, Shen Muan realized that the man beside him was not only taller than him, but also had longer legs. I didn't know what he had grown up with. I really envied him. Shen Muan wants to grow longer, but he has passed the age to grow taller. This is the pain in his heart. After a few steps, I arrived at the little zoo in the kindergarten. There is a grassland here. The grassland is surrounded by wooden fences. There are many beautiful colorful small houses on the grassland and on the trees. There are some crooked pictures painted on them. Every small house is hanging at the door. A small sign is the name given to them by the children. At a glance, it was all eaten. Usually the birds and rabbits who live in the small house at this time will come out to play, eat something or something, but today I haven't seen any of them. Mizanin, where's the little animal? He only stretched his head and looked at the empty grass. He had forgotten that he was still in Chu Yi's arms, and his short legs wanted to go down and take a look. After seeing this situation, Chu Siyuan silently looked at his uncle. "Wait a minute, the teacher will go and take a look first," Shen Muan said. Shen Muan felt a little strange, and walked over to take a look, and found that they were all hiding in their hut and did not dare to come out. When they saw Shen Muan, they moved a few times and shrank into a ball again. "Isn't it sick?" Shen Muan was a little skeptical, but they took good care of her. "And there is no problem with regular medical examinations." Shen Muan's voice was not very loud, but Chu Yi heard clearly. He uncomfortably put the two little guys next to Shen Muan, and then walked back. Shen Muan didn't figure out what was going on, and saw that after Chu Yi had retreated 5 meters away, the little animals hidden in the colorful little house slowly ran out. They ran to Shen Muan's feet habitually, and surrounded the two children next to them. Seeing so many little rabbits, little yellow chickens, and even 2 little milk cats, the two children were very excited. Shen Muan looked at the animals on the ground, then looked at Chu Yi, who was far away from them, and was silent. Shen Muan couldn't bear to sigh in his heart, what a magical physique this is. Chu Yi had been used to this a long time ago. He had never been welcomed by animals since he was a child. He still remembers that when he was a child, he was taken to the zoo by his parents. Those animals reacted very strongly. If they hadn't had a cage, they would have ran away. At that time, because of this incident, it caused a sensation, and the staff in the zoo was scared enough to think that something happened. Since this incident, Chu Yi has never been to the zoo again. This is the second time he has come to the zoo. Chu Yi originally thought it would be better after so many years, but it didn't seem to have changed at all. The animals were still very afraid of him, but it seemed that the reaction this time was not so strong. Because there are 2 little guys here, Shen Muan just looked at Chu Yi curiously, and then focused on Chu Si-yuan. Surrounded by the furry little animals, Chu Si-yuan's attitude softened at a speed visible to the naked eye. He moved very lightly when he touched the rabbit, and he would not deliberately pick up the little animals. His movements were not as careful as Chu Si-yuan, and Shen Muan guided him to touch these little animals with just what kind of strength. Shen Muan was very patient and whispered to the 2 little guys. In fact, under normal circumstances, Shen Muan would chat with his parents at this time, but today's situation does not allow him to do so. After all, Chu Yi was indeed a little far away. At this time, on the other side, seeing that his brother hadn't returned his news, Shen Fangqi persistently called Fang Su. The few people who followed Fang Su out to play teased him, saying, "Fang Xiao is really popular today. The phone is ringing non-stop." Fang Su had blocked several numbers, but the other party was still making calls, and with the instigation of others, he still answered the call. "Hello, please don't hang up. I'm Fangqi Shen from the Zhejiang City Public Security Bureau. It's really not a scam. Please go to the kindergarten to check it out." Shen Fangqi spoke very fast, for fear that Fang Su would hang up again. When Fang Su heard the name Shen Fangqi very familiar, he suddenly took the phone of the person next to him and searched for Shen Fangqi's name. Some news related to Shen Fangqi jumped out. "Okay, I see, thank you," Fang Su said in a daze. Did he really misunderstand the other party? After Fang Su hung up the phone, he picked up the car key and left. When he left, he almost carried someone else's mobile phone in his pocket. After Fang Su got in the car, he called his sister, "Sister, what is the name of the kindergarten that only reads Chuntianhua Kindergarten? Why, what did you do?" The female voice over the phone seemed a little anxious. Before Fang Su could say anything, he heard his brother-in-law's voice saying, "It's not Chuntianhua Kindergarten, it's Spring Kindergarten." Fuck, it was really wrong. Fang Su cursed, stepped on the accelerator and rushed out. Seeing the news inspired by Shen Fang, Shen Muan breathed a sigh of relief, but could be regarded as contacting the other party. He clapped his hands and attracted the attention of the 2 children who were still playing with the little animals. "Well, we have been playing with the little animals for long enough today. Now we are going to wash our hands and eat snacks together." Although he was a little reluctant, he still withdrew his hand obediently. As soon as he was about to rub his clothes, Shen Muan grabbed his soft arm and said, "Wash hands and hands first." He just put down his hand angrily, ran to the sink next to him, stretched out his hand to automatically wash the phone and spit out a bunch of bubbles, only rubbing his hands obediently under Shen Muan's gaze. "Si Yuan, go to." Shen Muan reached out and touched Chu Siyuan's little prickly head. I have been playing with the little animals for a long time today. Can you come back tomorrow? Chu Siyuan was a little unhappy, but he let go of his hands holding the rabbit and went to wash his hands obediently. Chu Yi waited for them to come and leaned in. He looked at Chu Siyuan and asked, "Are you having fun?" "Humph." Chu Siyuan turned his head and snorted, acting extremely uncooperatively. His hand was still holding the corner of Shen Muan's clothes, and he didn't want to talk to his uncle. Chu Siyuan still remembered what Chu Yi had done to him these past few days. He could bear a grudge against him. Shen Muan smiled helplessly. Chu Yi looked accustomed to it. It seemed that the relationship between his uncle and nephew was really not very good. Shen Muan didn't preach to Chu Siyuan right away. He and Chu Siyuan were not very familiar with each other, and it would easily arouse children's resentment to say something rashly. This will not only fail to adjust the relationship between the two, but will deepen the contradiction. "Okay, shall we go to eat fruit together?" Shen Muan diverted the attention of the two children, and it was the children's fruit time at this point. Every morning in the kindergarten, someone brought fruit. Every day, the fruit was different. When Shen Muan saw the time, he simply took the two little guys to eat with other children, so as not to make trouble again. Children themselves are very hungry, especially when the two children have just had a fierce battle as a prerequisite. "Can you eat fruit? Are you allergic to anything?" In fact, this question should be asked of the parents, but the parents are not here, so Shen Muan is not good to just ask Chu Yi, so he just asks first. Children, if there are things that cannot be eaten, parents will usually tell the children, but there is no guarantee that the children will remember it. "I can't eat oranges," Chu Yi said suddenly. Shen Muan was taken aback, looked at Chu Yi blankly for a few seconds, and then smiled. "Okay, I remembered it. Where is the only one with Si Yuan?" Chu Yi seemed to understand something in Shen Muan's gaze for just a few seconds, and turned his head in embarrassment. He answered the question first when he asked the kid. Looking at it from Shen Muan's angle, Chu Yi's red ears could be seen at a glance, and he suddenly felt that the man in front of him was a little cute. He only patted his chest, and said very loudly, "I can eat anything. Only I am not allergic." Although he only doesn't understand what allergies are, he can indeed eat anything, that's for sure. Chu Siyuan looked at Chu Yi blankly, and Chu Yi also looked at Chu Siyuan blankly. Very good, it seems that neither of them knows. Today's fruit is strawberry. Shen Muan recalled the label on the list he sent last time. "Can you all eat it?" "Yes." He only replied very cooperatively. His current performance is quite different from when he first came. It seems that he is already familiar with the environment. But when I thought that it was just a wrong delivery. Shen Muan felt that this matter should be explained by Mr. Fang. Chu Siyuan nodded, and he glanced at him disgustingly, thinking that he was too noisy. Chu Yi didn't react at all this time. His eyes were a little erratic, as if he was still thinking about what was just now. After sending the two people to the class to divide the fruit, Shen Muan gave his share of fruit to Chu Yi. Looking at the smiling young man in front of him, Chu Yi hesitated for a moment, and took it. The two sat outside the classroom, the breeze was blowing, everything was very quiet and beautiful. Chu also found that he could maintain a very relaxed state around this young man, and according to his observation, this young man was very popular in this kindergarten. Especially children, almost every child smiles at him. Such kindergarten may be very suitable for Chu Siyuan. Chu Yi felt that the choice his father made was quite good. However, Xiao Jiaran would also send the children here, which surprised Chu Yi a little. Shen Muan looked at the flowers in the garden for a while, and when he came back to his senses, he found that the plate with strawberries next to him was empty. He was a little dumbfounded. Although he gave Chu Yi, he really unexpectedly, the other party actually ate all of them and didn't leave him a single one. Chu Yi glanced at the clean plate and then at Shen Mu's look, his ears were even redder, although he still looked expressionless, he was very mad inside. Obviously he would never do such a thing, why do it again and again today? But the other party didn't seem to be angry either, and Chu also decided to buy a dozen caddies of strawberries tomorrow to supply Shen Muan. By the way, let's add a WeChat, so it's easier to contact. Shen Muan took out his mobile phone. He didn't want the same thing to happen again, and it felt too desperate to not be able to contact the parents. Connect? What to contact? Chu Yi, who often strikes up a conversation, almost subconsciously wanted to refuse, but when he was about to say it, he swallowed it again. Looking at Shen Muan's face, he silently took out his mobile phone, opened his QR code business card, and added a contact information. Is it okay? After adding Chu Yi, Shen Muan typed him a note, Chu Si Yuan's uncle, and said briskly, what will happen to the kindergarten from now on? I will contact you on WeChat. Fortunately, he didn't say it. Chu Yi suddenly felt thankful, otherwise it would be even more embarrassing now. Shen Muan put away his mobile phone and was about to take Chu Yi to go through the formalities of entering the kindergarten. A young man in a red suit rushed over. His face was sweaty, and black broken hair was attached to his face. Although a little panting, the eyes are very bright. Teacher Shen, I'm sorry. Fang Su gasped for a second. I only know about the thing. I'm so sorry. Fang Su blamed all the problems in this matter on himself, and he was a little grateful. Some self-blame, not knowing what to say for a while. Mr. Fang, I'm really sorry, I'm also responsible for this matter. I didn't figure out the name of the kid who entered the kindergarten today, so I misunderstood it. Shen Muan didn't think this incident was entirely Fang Su's fault. Their kindergarten also did it. Responsible, we must never allow this kind of thing to happen again in the future. Chu Yi hugged his arms, somewhat unaware of the development of the gaffe. What happened? At this time, Fang Su found that Chu Yi, who had been standing next to him, pulled his face down instantly, and his attitude changed faster than the children in Shen Muan's class. Shen Muan wanted to explain, he was interrupted by Fang Su before he could say it. I forgot to just go through the formalities for entering the kindergarten. What are you doing here? As soon as he saw Chu Yi, Fang Su's unhappy mood surged. Chu also felt that this person was inexplicable. I will do whatever you do, Teacher Shen, let's go through the admission procedures. The last half of the sentence was addressed to Shen Muan. Fang Su grabbed Shen Muan's arm and said, give it first. Shen Muan wanted to say something, so Fang Su pulled forward. Fang Su walked 2 steps forward and felt resistance. He thought it was Chu Yi who was pulling Shen Muan. He turned his head angrily to stop Chu Yi, but found that Chu Yi was standing beside him motionless, and he was still holding Shen Muan's arm. Shen Muan easily took his arm back from Fang Su's hand. Mr. Fang, don't worry, let's confirm it first, but are we planning to go to our kindergarten now? The kindergarten agreed before has said hello. Fang Su was a little guilty when asked by Shen Muan. He looked at Chu Yi and went up. His first reaction was that he could not let Chu Yi know that he had sent him to the wrong kindergarten. He didn't think so much at all. I just stood by the windowsill and realized my uncle was coming, so I stepped on a small stool and lay on the window. Uncle, why are you here? I haven't finished school yet. Fang Su's mind was blank, he was a bit fierce, and he kept looking at him, which scared the other children. A little girl with a double ponytail was crying while pulling her clothes, calling the teacher in her mouth, for fear of what this bad guy would do. Crying is contagious. A child's crying is very easy to cause a chain reaction. Shen Muan felt bad at once, and hurriedly went into the classroom to coax the crying little girl. But it was too late. The children started crying one by one. Although they didn't know what happened, it didn't prevent them from crying together. The cries one after another scared Fang Su and Chu Yi outside the classroom, both of them looked dumbfounded. He only got off the stool and hid behind Shen Muan. He didn't cry, but he was very nervous, because he just saw the little girl put her nose on him, which scared him. Chu Siyuan watched the other children crying like they were watching a play, and found that the little fat guy next to him had become less crying. He even pulled people's hair, making them crying louder. Shen Muan took a deep breath, with one hand, and put Chu Siyuan and Chu Siyuan into the arms of their uncles, and then went to solve the cries in the classroom. Chu Yi silently gave Fang Su a thumbs up. Although he and Fang Su had not been particularly dealing with each other, he didn't expect that the other party would suddenly cry a whole class of children. Fang Su, it's amazing. Fang Su almost exploded it to Chu Yi on the spot when he heard this, but when he heard the voice of Shen Muan comforting the children, he endured it, but the look in Chu Yi's eyes became dangerous. If it wasn't for the wrong place, he might be able to fight Chu Yi. Chu Yi touched Chu Siyuan's head, then let go of his hand in disgust, and put him aside. You stand by yourself. Chu Siyuan held his head with two short hands and grabbed it a few times. He didn't dislike Chu Yi yet, but Chu Yi disliked him first. Chu also didn't notice that among the few people present, except that he didn't hate himself, everyone seemed to think he was unhappy. As soon as Shen Muan came out and found that the outside was very quiet and the atmosphere was a little bit wrong, he didn't know what happened, so he asked, Mr. Chu, you will go through the admission procedures with me later. What happened to Mr. Fang today is really true. Sorry, now regarding the question of only studying, what are your plans? Shen Muan felt that he could remember the incident today for a lifetime, which might become one of the most memorable things in his career. I need to discuss with my sister and them. Fang Su didn't answer immediately. He could see that he only liked Shen Muan, so he was not very sure. If he was sent to another kindergarten, his condition would be better. As good as it is now. It's just that it's not that he has never been to a kindergarten before. It's just that he is not very happy every time in the kindergarten, so he has changed several places. He just didn't understand what his uncle and teacher Anan were talking about. He grabbed his uncle's clothes and asked, Uncle, won't you go and help me with the admission procedures? Okay, then I will take Mr. Chu to go through the formalities of entering the kindergarten first. Shen Muan smiled, and he stretched out his hand and touched the head of Jizi. It's okay, just play here for a while. Fang Su just walked to the side to call his sister. Chu Yi glanced at Fang Su, carried Chu Siyuan with one hand, and followed Shen Muan slowly. Seeing Chu Siyuan walking alone, Shen Muan almost subconsciously held his hand. Chu Siyuan wanted to struggle at first, but when he saw Shen Muan's eyes, he was obediently led. There was a special person to handle the admission procedures, and Shen Muan just took them there, and then chatted quietly with Chu Siyuan next to him. At first, Chu Siyuan was not used to squatting on the side and chatting quietly, but his attention was easily attracted by Shen Muan. After a while, he began to excitedly introduce some of his collection of toys to Shen Muan. Because he was still young, even though Chu Siyuan spoke clearly, sometimes it was easy for him to say nothing. Shen Muan did not rush to correct him, but listened patiently. After Chu Yi completed the formalities for Chu Siyuan and came out, he saw two figures, one big and one small. The two got together, and the voices were not very loud, but Chu Yi could still hear a lot of content. A little dumbfounded. Shen Muan put himself in the same position as Chu Siyuan at this time. The two were not like teachers and students, but like friends. Chu also felt more and more that this teacher named Shen Muan was extraordinary. Although many teachers can put their position on the same level as the students, and be friends with the students. But, if you put yourself in the position of a 3-year-old kid, it's probably Shen Muan alone, right? Shen Muan didn't know that his image in Chu Yi's mind had changed drastically. He was laughing because of Chu Siyuan's immature words. Seeing that Chu Siyuan and Shen Muan get along pretty well, Chu Yi is completely relieved, he finally doesn't have to carry this little kid all the time. If possible, he really wanted to put Chu Si-yuan in foster care for a few days with Shen Muan. But this idea is not feasible. Shen Muan found that Chu Yi had come out, and smiled brightly at him. Chu Yi was stunned for a few seconds before slowly walking over. The smile on Chu Si-yuan's face slowly disappeared because of Chu Yi's approach. He reached out and grabbed Shen Muan's trouser legs. It seemed that because someone could support his waist now, his tone became rude. "You can go back." Tuition 888,888, are you credit card or cash? Chu Yi laughed and asked with a hand out. Shen Muan looked a little speechless. Can't this make up a nonsense be sincere? With so many 8, I thought it was selling goods if I didn't know. The series of 8s made Chu Si-yuan stunned. He stretched out 2 small hands, but he couldn't count the number of 888,888. I don't seem to have that much money. Chu Si-yuan looked at Shen Muan in a bewilderment. He couldn't count it. Shen Muan especially wanted to reply, "It's useless for you to look at me, and I don't have so much money." But as a teacher, he couldn't answer children like this. Therefore, Shen Muan chose to expose Chu Yi. Tuition is not that expensive, and Si-yuan is not paying for it now. Shen Muan touched Chu Si-yuan's soft short hair. "No, it was the money I paid just now, Chu Si-yuan, let's make an IOU." Chu Yi seems to be reluctant to let go of this, and deliberately teased Chu Si-yuan. Chu Si-yuan didn't even know much right now, and he didn't even call an IOU at all. He threw himself into Shen Muan's arms, and felt a little more confident in his heart. "I want to tell Grandpa, you put him in the vase in the living room. Broke in. Then glued it back again." Chu Si-yuan almost forgot about it, and when he was anxious, he remembered it. Shen Muan saw that the two were about to enter the mode of a 3-year-old quarrel, and quickly said, "It's all right, no kidding, let's go to class. Will the teacher introduce the children to you?" Chu Si-yuan shook his head. "I don't like them, they are too stupid." "No, everyone is a very smart kid, so get along well." Shen Muan discovered that this kid really seemed to have learned a blind confidence from his uncle. It was like the only news in Chu Yi's circle of friends. Shen Muan didn't know whether to say that his self-confidence was good or bad. Children can make corrections slowly, adults forget it. Shen Muan looked at the small group of Chu Si-yuan with thoughtfulness in his heart. But speaking of it, Chu Si-yuan and Chu Yi seem to have seen the two names recently. Only and Fang Su's name are also very familiar. Shen Muan seriously recalled that he hadn't met anyone with the same name and surname as them recently, so why is he so familiar? This is simply too strange. After completing the formalities for entering the kindergarten, Chu Yi left. Seeing him leave, Chu Si-yuan was very happy. It was completely different from the previous "don't touch me." Shen Muan was holding Chu Si-yuan's hand, and before moving, a figure ran over quickly and slammed into it like a small firecracker. Shen Muan immediately picked Chu Si-yuan up and hugged him, and in the next second, there was a crying juvenile pendant on his lap. What's wrong? Shen Muan probably had a bottom line in his heart, seeing only the state of her and the expression of Fang Su. Although it is regrettable, the parents' decision is not easy to change. Fang Su pulled a face. "Leave him alone. He said he wanted to go home with you tonight, but I didn't agree. By the way, Teacher Shen, where are the formalities for admission to the kindergarten? I'll be able to leave once I'm done." Fang Su said after another. Shen Muan nodded, pointed the direction for him, and then looked at the man who secretly wiped his tears and nose on his pants. Chu Si-yuan hugged Shen Muan's neck with disgust, his 2 short legs shrugged up, and his clothes were rolled up, revealing his thin waist. Several abdominal muscles are faintly visible. Fang Su touched his stomach subconsciously. It was very good, a complete abdominal muscle. No wonder he couldn't pull Shen Muan. It must be because the opponent's abdominal muscles are too heavy. The author has something to say. Thanks to the little angel who voted for me or irrigated the nutrient solution during 20207232:521122042917:55:09. Thanks to the little angels who threw landmines, 2 long nights. Thanks to the little angel who irrigates the nutrient solution, 3 bottles of Phi Hung. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. Shen Muan felt that he was really tired this day. When the kindergarten was over, he just cried with his leg in his arms. People don't want to come to school, so they cry, but they just don't want to go home to hold him and cry. With just this cry, everyone in the kindergarten knew that there was a child in Rose's class who liked teacher An so much that he was reluctant to go home. In the end, Fang Su had a black face and grabbed the person back. Before leaving, she was just like a princess captured by the evil dragon, hoping that his teacher An could save him. But his teacher An didn't want to save him. The children next to him were almost gone, and he was the only one who had been cheating. Shen Muan sent away with a smile on his face, but he was finally relieved. At this moment, he suddenly felt that someone was pulling his pants. He looked down and found that it was Chu Si Yuan. "Si Yuan, what's the matter?" Shen Muan asked. Chu Si Yuan suddenly hugged Shen Muan's legs and wanted to climb up along. Shen Muan quickly picked up the person. How could this child be like a cat and like to pull his trouser legs so much? It seems that I have to wear a pair of pants that can be worn with a belt tomorrow. Chu Si Yuan quietly said in Shen Muan's ear, "Can I run away from home and go to your house?" Shen Muan looked sideways, somewhat incomprehensible. Why did you want to run away suddenly? Chu Si Yuan got close, and Shen Muan could clearly feel the heat he exhaled, and couldn't help but shrink back, a little itchy. After listening to Chu Si Yuan's reasons, Shen Muan felt a little surprised, but it was not very unexpected. After all, judging from the relationship between Chu Yi and Chu Si Yuan, the 2 nephews and uncles did not like each other very much. Even so, you can't run away from home. Shen Muan tried to reason with Chu Si Yuan, and then he called. He took out his cell phone and found that it was Chu Yi's call. "Hey!" Shen Muan just opened her mouth and was preempted by the opponent. "Teacher Shen, I am Chu Yi. I'm sorry, I have something to deal with. I can't pick up Chu Si Yuan. Can you take care of him for me first?" Chu Yi spoke quickly, and he seemed very anxious. Shen Muan glanced at the little guy in his arms and said, "Then I will take Si Yuan home to eat, and I will send you the address on WeChat. You can come to my house to pick him up." "Okay, thank you very much." Hearing Shen Muan's words, Chu Yi was relieved a lot. After he hung up the phone, he took the paper from the assistant and wiped off the blood on his hand. "Well, your wish to run away from home is fulfilled." Shen Muan hung up the phone, patted Chu Si Yuan's and asked, "What would you like to eat tonight?" Chu Si Yuan, who vaguely heard the content of the call, shook his short legs happily, and began to think seriously about what to eat at night. Chu Si Yuan's expression was extraordinarily serious, and people who didn't know thought he was thinking about some important issues. After sending away the children in the kindergarten, Shen Muan left work completely. He usually rides a bicycle to get off work, but today there is an extra Chu Si Yuan, and he does not have a special seat for children. He is afraid that Chu Si Yuan will catch him. "Can't help. Why don't we change the bike? There is a chair behind me that the kids can sit on." Teacher Chen from the sunflower class next door saw that he was a little embarrassed, so he proactively said, "There is a special seat for children behind Teacher Chen's bicycle, which is reserved for her daughter." "Then what about your daughter?" Shen Muan asked. Teacher Chen felt a headache when thinking of the little demon in her own house. "She doesn't like this anymore, let me go to tear it down, I haven't gone yet." After that, Teacher Chen took herself out of a row of bicycles. A pink bicycle with stickers that many children liked was pushed out. Shen Muan and Chu Si Yuan hesitated looking at the pink bicycle of Teacher Chen and the sticker on it. Or, shall we go back? Shen Muan looked at Chu Siyuan and said in a low voice. Chu Siyuan nodded frantically. He didn't like Teacher Chen's bicycle at all. Shen Muan simply rejected Teacher Chen's help, saying that they planned to go shopping nearby and walked back slowly. Teacher Chen was a little confused, but when her eyes fell on her and Shen Muan's bicycles, she knew the reason immediately. She held back a smile and watched the young leave. Shen Muan was relieved when he walked out of the kindergarten with Chu Siyuan in his arms. It's not that Teacher Chen's bicycle is not good, but as a boy, it feels a bit weird to use such a girly bicycle. Chu Siyuan simply felt that pink was something girls use, so he didn't want to ride that bicycle. Have you thought about what to eat for the evening? Shen Muan held Chu Siyuan in one hand. He originally wanted Chu Siyuan to come down and walk by himself, but it was really tiring to bend over and hold the children, so he just hugged his hands. Forget it doesn't weigh much anyway. Chu Siyuan shook his head, and for a while, he really didn't know what to eat. Then let's go to the vegetable market together. If you see anyone you want to eat, tell me. Shen Muan took out his mobile phone and sent a text message to his brother, and took Chu Siyuan to the vegetable market near his home. This is the first time that Chu Siyuan has come to this kind of place. He looked around curiously, and suddenly pointed to a fish stall and shouted, "Mau Mau." Shen Muan looked at it and smiled, "That's a cat raised in this vegetable market. Do you want to go and take a look? But you can't touch it." "Yes." Chu Siyuan nodded immediately. Shen Muan put Chu Siyuan down and led him to the front of the fish stall. Outside the glass tank, a chubby orange cat stared at the fiberglass fish, eager to try. The boss is playing with his mobile phone next to him, regardless of whether the cat is eager to see himself. When Shen Muan and the others leaned over, the boss looked up and saw that there were children, and they continued to play with their mobile phones. This orange cat squats next to his stall every day, and children are often attracted to it. Chu Siyuan stood behind the orange cat, and the orange cat squatted there calmly, his tail wagging a few times, and he was not afraid because of people coming. Chu Siyuan looked at the orange cat and then at the glass jar. He was very curious what the orange cat was looking at. "If you want to eat fish, I haven't seen it move." Chu Siyuan moved his position altogether, keeping the same height as the orange cat, and staring at the glass tank together. Shen Muan looked very interesting, so he took a picture and sent it to Chu Yi. Chu, who was dealing with things on the construction site, felt the phone vibrate. As soon as he turned it on, he saw the photo sent by Shen Muan, and his mood immediately became much better. "So cute." Chu Yi replied a message and put away his phone. It's time for him to deal with the reporters. Chu Siyuan watched for a long time and didn't see why he came. At this time, the belly of a fish in the glass tank was facing upwards, motionless. Fat Orange immediately meowed. The boss yawned, put the phone aside, picked up the net bag and fished out the dead fish, placed it in front of Fat Orange, and said disgustingly, "Eat, eat and go while you are done." Fat Ju yelled to the boss again, and then ran to the corner with the dead fish in his mouth and started eating. Chu Siyuan suddenly realized, he finally understood. Shen Muan felt that he should be able to leave, and saw Chu Siyuan continue to look at the fish in the glass tank. "Aren't you leaving?" Shen Muan was a little unsure when he saw Chu Siyuan had returned to his original position. Chu Siyuan shook his head and said, "I want to wait for a fish too." The boss who heard this silently looked at Shen Muan, the meaning in his eyes couldn't be more clearly expressed, "Hurry up and take your child away." Shen Muan smiled embarrassedly, he leaned over to Chu Siyuan and said, "We will buy back whichever one you want." Chu Siyuan continued to shake his head. Shen Muan probably understood Chu Siyuan's thoughts, and he said helplessly, "Even if the fish is dead, you still have to pay." "Why?" Chu Siyuan looked back at Shen Muan fiercely, "Mau Mau didn't pay for it. The cat is soliciting business for me." The boss couldn't help but interjected, "Children, there is no free lunch in the world. Chu Si-yuan looked at the fish, then at the fat orange next to him, turned around and threw on Shen Muan's body, and said unhappily, "Then let's go." "Don't want to eat fish? The boiled fish made by the teacher is delicious." Shen Muan deliberately prolonged his voice, making a pity. Chu Si-yuan really got on the set, but he hesitated because of what was just now, but in the end he couldn't hold back and said, "I want to eat." "There is no need to have trouble with the food." Shen Muan rubbed Chu Si-yuan's head with a smile, and asked him to pick the fish. Shen Muan first told Chu Si-yuan how to pick the fish, and then watched him pick the fish next to him. Chu Si-yuan remembered Shen Muan's words, and it took a long time to pick a fish that he was satisfied with. The boss fished out the fish very neatly, quickly processed it, installed it, and handed it to Shen Muan, 23 yuan and 7 cents, WeChat or Alipay. Alipay. Shen Muan scanned the QR code to pay, took the processed fish and led Chu Si-yuan to look at other dishes. Chu Si-yuan's gaze fell on the fish Shen Muan was holding from time to time, and Shen Muan shook the black bag in his hand and asked, "Are you going to carry it? It's a bit heavy." "Want?" Chu Si-yuan took the bag very solemnly, looked at the fish inside, and held it in his hand contentedly. It seemed that because of the fish, Chu Si-yuan was not very interested in other things, so Shen Muan picked some vegetables and meat, and took the little guy back to cook. Shen Fangqi had no cases during this period, so he came back quite early. He heard the sound of opening the door and walked over to pick up what Shen Muan was holding, but he didn't expect to be stuffed with a child in his arms. "Brother, take care of Si-yuan, I'll take the things to the kitchen." Shen Muan went into the kitchen after speaking. Shen Fangqi watched Chu Si-yuan become silent. Could this child be the one who was sent to the wrong kindergarten today? "Why are you still following?" Chu Si-yuan didn't say a word either, he still held the fish in his hand, and looked at Shen Fangqi blankly. After Shen Muan put the things away, he thought of the fish in Chu Si-yuan's hand. As soon as he came out, he saw the two of them standing in a stalemate. "What are you doing?" Shen Muan dried the water on his hands and walked over to pick up the fish from Chu Si-yuan. "Brother, you take Si-yuan to wash your hands and rinse your mouth. Don't stand here all the time." Shen Fangqi nodded stiffly. Like a robot, he took a disposable cup for Chu Si-yuan and took him to the toilet to wash his hands and gargle. Normally, Shen Fangqi rarely encounters children. He is exposed to criminal cases, even if he can reach those children, they are no longer there. Now that such a soft little guy stayed in his arms obediently, Shen Fangqi felt extraordinarily uncomfortable, as if he would get hurt by touching him twice. Although Shen Muan is a kindergarten teacher, he has never brought a child back. This is the first one. Chu Si-yuan blinked his eyes and was very obedient. He would do whatever Shen Fangqi asked him to do. Now he only hopes that Mr. Anan can take him away, and he can clearly feel the muscles on this uncle's body, his is very awkward. Shen Fangqi didn't know how to treat children. He had taken care of Shen Muan since he was a child, and Shen Muan could take care of himself most of the time when he was a child, but shouldn't such a little old child not be able to take care of himself? "Do you watch TV?" Shen Fangqi can only recall the occasional complaints from his teammates in the office, saying that his little nephew at home likes watching TV and can watch it for 2 or 3 hours. Chu Si-yuan looked at Shen Fangqi, felt the muscles he had touched, and nodded. Shen Fangqi breathed a sigh of relief instantly, put the person on the sofa, and gave him a remote control, regardless of whether he would use it or not. Chu Si-yuan took the remote control and pressed it randomly, and then randomly pressed a TV. The two sat on the sofa 20 or 30 centimeters apart, silently, as if watching TV intently. Shen Muan saw this scene when he came out carrying the food, a little speechless. "Time to eat." Hearing these 3 words, Shen Fangqi rushed into the kitchen, as if going to run 5 kilometers. Seeing that he was gone, Chu Si-yuan instantly ran to the side of Shen Muan, holding his thigh and refused to let go. Shen Muan didn't know what to say. He put down the food, picked up Chu Siyuan and found him a higher chair next to his position, and then put the person on it. Sitting. Shen Fangqi had brought out the dishes and meals, and he waited for Chu Siyuan and Shen Muan to sit down before taking his place. Shen Muan wiped Chu Siyuan's hands with a wet tissue, and gave him a spoon. "What do you want to eat? The teacher will give it to you." "Okay." Chu Siyuan regained a little bit of vitality outside because of Shen Muan. Shen Muan found it very interesting when he looked at it. This is a typical nest in a horizontal position. I couldn't pull it in front of Chu Yi, and he didn't even dare to show the atmosphere in front of Shen Fangqi, but he was quite obedient in front of him. After eating, Shen Fangqi went to wash the dishes, and Shen Muan watched TV with Chu Siyuan for a while. Shen Fangqi knew that he would make Chu Siyuan uncomfortable here, so he went back to the room to play games after washing the dishes. Chu Siyuan rubbed back and forth on the sofa like a caterpillar, slowly rubbing next to Shen Muan. "Teacher Anan, your brother is so fierce. Can I grow up to be as strong as him? I want to give my uncle an unforgettable memory." Shen Muan looked at this little boy, patted his belly, and said earnestly, "If you give your uncle an unforgettable memory, my brother should be able to give you an unforgettable memory." It was getting late, and Shen Muan sent a message to Chu Yi, saying that Chu Siyuan would sleep well with him today. Chu Siyuan was a little excited. This was the first time he spent the night at someone else's house. Shen Muan turned over at home and found that there was no clothes that Chu Siyuan could wear, so he simply found a clean white tee to wear as a pajama for Chu Siyuan. "Let's wash it together." Shen Muan put the clean clothes in the bathroom first, and he still held a pack of disposable towels in his hand, which were left over from the previous trip, and it just came in handy this time. Chu Siyuan nodded vigorously. He followed Shen Muan like a small tail, and Shen Muan was a little bit afraid of accidentally hitting him. "You obediently wait for me here, okay?" Shen Muan hugged the person outside and sat on a small stool, went to the bathroom to put water, and then came out and hugged him in. "I just said that Chu Siyuan promised to take a bath together super fast, but when he really wanted to take a bath together, Chu Siyuan was a bit shy. He clutched his clothes, his cheeks flushed with heat. Seeing that he was shy, Shen Muan took off and went into the bathtub first, and sighed, "Oh, it's so comfortable, aren't you coming?" Chu Siyuan hesitated for a moment, and slowly took off his clothes. Shen Muan stretched out his hand to support the little guy, let him step on the stool, and slowly rolled into the bathtub. Chu Siyuan sat down on Shen Muan's stomach, and he almost didn't jump up directly. Seeing Shen Muan's reaction, Chu Siyuan couldn't help but giggled. Shen Muan slapped the water badly, splashing Chu Siyuan's face. Chu Siyuan immediately began to fight back. The two said it was a bath, more like playing in the water. Shen Fangqi had come out twice to pour water, and found that Shen Muan and Chu Siyuan hadn't come out yet, and couldn't help but lean to the bathroom to hear what they were doing. After hearing the laughter of Shen Muan and Chu Siyuan, the two had a great time. Hearing the laughter of the two, Shen Fangqi suddenly remembered that he and his younger brother seemed to often play like this when they were young. At that time, Shen Muan would often make him cry, and then his father would come in and teach him. Shen Fangqi looked at the family portrait hung on the wall in the living room. He wiped it every day, and his eyes were full of nostalgia. Shen Fang was inspired to stay. Seeing that the time has been long enough, he knocked on the bathroom door and reminded, "Don't play for too long, go to bed early." "Okay." Shen Muan replied absently, scooped Chu Siyuan up to wash away the foam on his body, wiped it dry and replaced it with white tea, and asked him to sit on the bed and wait for himself. With a towel on his head, Chu Siyuan ran to Shen Muan's room obediently. Shen Muan's room is carpeted, so you can step on it barefoot. There are many dolls on the floor and on the bed. The bookshelf next to the desk is full of figures and some dolls made by yourself. Chu Siyuan stood in front of the bookshelf with bright eyes. He seemed to like Shen Muan's bookshelf very much. Although he liked it very much, Chu Si-yuan didn't reach out to touch it, but just watched by the side. Shen Muan came in with a hair dryer, and saw that he had been standing next to the bookshelf, and beckoned, "Let's look at it later, let's blow my hair first." Chu Si-yuan reluctantly walked to Shen Muan, his eyes still fixed on the figures on the bookshelf. "Like it?" Shen Muan asked. "Like it?" Chu Si-yuan replied without hesitation. "That's it." Shen Muan dragged his voice, and said under Chu Si-yuan's expectant gaze, "If you like it, take a look." Immediately afterwards, Shen Muan felt that Chu Si-yuan was a little unhappy, and he turned his back to face Shen Muan with the back of his head. Shen Muan didn't care either. First he blew his hair, and then stuffed the person into the bed. "Hurry up and go to sleep." Shen Muan waited for Chu Si-yuan to fall asleep and went to the living room with his mobile phone and hair dryer. Shen Muan was lying halfway on the sofa, constantly swiping his mobile phone. Because of Chu Si-yuan, he didn't have time to swipe his mobile phone after get off work today. This was unbearable for a severe mobile phone patient. After checking Weibo, Shen Muan found that it was almost 10 o'clock, and the author of the novel he had recently read was updated at 9 o'clock, just in time to see the latest chapter. Just when Shen Muan opened the Jinjiang app expectantly, the network suddenly got stuck, and a server-chasing text popped up on the interface. Shen Muan quit and re-entered before returning to normal, but shortly afterwards, he discovered a very strange thing. Where did the novel he chased? Shen Muan wondered if the Jinjiang app had been used again, so he changed his computer and found that it still didn't. Not only was the book he was chasing missing, but the Guzhou novel series in the column of the wife who wrote the essay all disappeared. "You can't find it on Baidu." Shen Muan called the customer service phone, and the other party said that he did not have the novels he was talking about. Shen Muan was a little panicked. Did he remember it wrong? Impossible. He also revisited those ancient saponins last Saturday and stayed up all night. Shen Muan turned out the Weibo of the wife who wrote the article and sent a private message to her, but the reply she got was that she had never written the books that Shen Muan said. Shen Muan also specially recalled some plots sent to the wife named Mu XX, but the other party behaved at a loss and said that she would not use reality to write novels. Seeing this reply, Shen Muan was silly. Looking at the things he sent, Shen Muan suddenly understood why he thought Chu Si-yuan and their names were familiar. He opened Baidu in a panic and found that many companies he had seen in the novel suddenly appeared in the world. The backgrounds of Chu Si-yuan and Xia Ruzi can also be matched. Shen Muan sat motionless on the sofa, like a sculpture. Shen Fangqi was taken aback by Shen Muan as soon as he came out. He just wanted to go to the toilet. "Is it so scary? What's wrong with you?" Shen Fangqi walked over and touched his brother's forehead with a strange look. He didn't have a fever. Could it be that he found that he had dropped his clay sculpture and then stuck it? Shen Fangqichen hesitated whether to apologize, and saw that Shen Muan handed the computer to himself. The above was some reports from the Chu group. "What's wrong?" Shen Fangqi looked around, but didn't see why. "Brother, there were no such companies before, right?" Shen Muan asked. Shen Fangqi touched Shen Muan's forehead again, but he didn't have a fever, and replied doubtfully, "Yes, it has always been." Shen Muan was silent for a while and suddenly said, "When you were 10 years old, you smashed Dad's vase and put me on the scene of the crime. In the end, my mother was beaten and cried." "Nonsense, obviously you crawled over by yourself." The result also caused him to be mixed doubles. "Okay, it's his brother." After Shen Muan confirmed this fact, he was finally relieved. It was his brother. He felt that he needed to slow down to accept this fact. Shen Fangqi felt that Shen Muan's current state was not very good, and he heard the doorbell as soon as he was about to ask. It should be Mr. Chu to pick up Si Yuan. Shen Muan came back to his senses. He planned to open the door without even wearing his shoes, but Shen Fangqi pressed it back. "Sit down, I'll go." Shen Fangqi really convinced his brother. He was obviously very reliable outside, and he became naive at home. Chu Yi carried a box of strawberries and looked at the man who was a few centimeters taller than him, wondering if he had gone wrong. Isn't this teacher Shen's home? The author has something to say. One code word makes me sleepy. I'm really hopeless. Crying thanks to the little angel who voted for me or irrigated the nutrient solution during 202050720050202050:14 thanks to the little angel who threw a landmine, one blood lotus. Thank you very much for your support. I will continue to work hard. Hello, is this teacher Shen Muan's home? Chu Yi glanced at the house number and made sure that he had not found the wrong place. He could feel the faint sense of oppression on the man opposite, completely different from Shen Muan's temperament. Yes. Mr. Chu, right. Shen Fangqi looked at Chu Yi. As soon as his brother read the information about the Chu group, the person in charge of the Chu group came to his door, which made him wonder if it happened today. What's the matter? Yes, I'm here to pick up Si Yuan. Chu Yi said. Why haven't you come in yet? Shen Muan waited for a while, and found that they hadn't come in, so he walked over and took a look. Shen Fangqi immediately moved aside to let Chu also enter. When Shen Muan gave Chu Yi slippers, Chu Yi could clearly feel that the man behind him was looking at him, and he felt as if he was being stared at by a beast. This feeling is not good. Chu is also the hunter in the mall. Si Yuan is already asleep, let's be lighter. Shen Muan said and took Chu Yi to his room. Chu Si Yuan slept soundly, but his sleeping posture was more bold. He put one leg on the pillow, his clothes were rolled up above his stomach, and half of the quilt was on the ground. If you look closely, you will find that the corners of his mouth are a little shiny. Chu also didn't know what to say. It was really embarrassing to throw it outside. Shen Muan's original descriptions of Chu Si Yuan in the book were all broken by this picture. Even if he will become the villain's overbearing president in the future, he is just a little baby now. Shen Muan felt that he didn't have to think so far, because the characters in the book were still small. Chu also couldn't help but leaned forward and patted Chu Si Yuan's chubby belly. Chu Si Yuan waved his hands subconsciously, but he slapped Chu Yi's face with a slap. The scene was very embarrassing for a while. Chu Yi's face turned dark, but Chu Si Yuan didn't notice that the danger was approaching at all. He rolled over, scratched his belly with his hand, and continued to fall asleep deeply. Chu also wanted to wake up Chu Si Yuan. He didn't start yet. Chu Si Yuan suddenly cocked. He seemed to feel the danger, and he slowly woke up. Chu Si Yuan was still a little confused. He almost subconsciously avoided Chu Yi, buried his head in the quilt, but forgot his was walking outside. Typical ears and bells. Si Yuan, your uncle is here to pick you up. Shen Muan pulled on the quilt, fearing that Chu Si Yuan might be held back. The little guy held the quilt tightly with both hands, and refused to let go. Chu Si Yuan groaned in the quilt, and Chu Yi directly pulled the person out of the quilt and hugged him in his arms. Chu Si Yuan was completely awake now. He stretched out his hand towards Shen Muan for the first time, but only saw a ruthless back. But the kid was wronged to death. Chu Si Yuan struggled to get out of Chu Yi's arms, but couldn't get rid of it, and was almost crying with anger. Be calm. Chu Yi patted Chu Si Yuan on the and warned him. Obviously he is so cute in the photos taken by Shen Muan, but in fact he is still a little devil. Chu Yi put Chu Si Yuan on the ground, and Chu Si Yuan ran towards Shen Muan without turning his head, completely forgetting that when he just reached out, Shen Muan rejected him. Chu Yi looked helplessly at the little guy who was swearing to be Shen Muan's leg pendant. Okay, we should go back, you have troubled people enough today. Si Yuan. Shen Muan touched the back of Chu Si Yuan's head. No way, Mr. Chu is talking to you. Chu Si Yuan was a little reluctant, but he obediently let go of Shen Muan a little bit, and said dully, I don't want to go back. I'm going to sleep with the teacher today. Chu Si-yuan clutched Shen Muan's trouser legs tightly, and Shen Muan only put his hands on his waist, for fear that Chu Si-yuan would pull him off at once. The kid didn't know who he learned from, so he liked to pick his trouser legs so much. Shen Muan felt that this bad habit should be corrected, otherwise it might be himself who would be ashamed in the end. Chu Si-yuan, stand for me. Chu Yi frowned and said sharply. Shen Muan could feel Chu Si-yuan's body stiffen. He tried to pull his leg away, but Chu Si-yuan quickly hugged him tighter again. Seeing Chu Si-yuan's reluctance, Shen Muan touched his nose. Why don't you two rest with me tonight, and go back tomorrow? Chu Yi hesitated for a while or refused. Today has caused a lot of trouble to Shen Muan, and he doesn't plan to follow Chu Si-yuan. In Chu Yi's eyes, this waywardness has no meaning. Stop making trouble. Chu Yi stretched out his hand to pull Chu Si-yuan over. Chu Si-yuan patted his hand away without hesitation. I hate you. Chu Si-yuan turned around and shouted at Chu Yi. Chu Yi was stunned. He knew that Chu Si-yuan didn't like him very much, and he didn't care too much, but he didn't expect that Chu Si-yuan would hate him so much. Si-yuan. Chu Si-yuan cried when Shen Muan could feel his clothes getting wet. No wailing, no screaming and rolling. He just opened his eyes and said nothing, but his tears kept streaming out, and he couldn't stop. Chu Yi didn't say anything. He didn't quite understand why Chu Si-yuan would say this. Chu was also at a loss. Shen Muan knelt down and hugged Chu Si-yuan, made a gesture to Chu, and pointed to the door. Chu Yi understood what Shen Muan meant. He glanced at Chu Si-yuan and walked out in silence. Shen Muan gently patted Chu Si-yuan on the back, letting his clothes get wet with tears. After a while, Chu Si-yuan's cry became smaller, and his eyes were red like rabbits. Cry now? Shen Muan asked. Chu Si-yuan grumbled very embarrassedly. Then can you tell me why you hate your uncle? Shen Muan wiped the tears from Chu Si-yuan's face and asked softly. Chu Si-yuan choked and said, I just hate him. Uncle hates it the most. Did Si-yuan miss mom and dad? A guess suddenly appeared in Shen Muan's mind. Yet. Chu Si-yuan nodded. Missing his parents, coupled with Chu Yi's way of taking care of his children, made Chu Si-yuan rebellious. He even thought that because of Chu Yi, mom and dad did not go home. Chu Yi has been behind the wall at the door, listening to Chu Si-yuan's words. His eyes are getting colder and colder. He very much doubted whether someone had deliberately said something in front of Chu Si-yuan, otherwise he couldn't think so. Did someone else tell you something? Just when Chu Yi was so suspicious, Shen Muan asked the doubts in his heart. Finally, he got a name from Chu Si-yuan's mouth. After Shen Muan coaxed Chu Si-yuan to sleep, he went to Chu Yi and talked with him. Children at this age are very easily influenced by others, and they cannot clearly distinguish which words are true and which words are false. Thank you, Teacher Shen, I was negligent. Chu Yi sincerely thanked him. He needs to tidy up the Chu family. You're welcome, after all, I am Si-yuan's teacher. Shen Muan smiled softly, like winter sunshine, warm and brilliant. Chu Yi was in a daze. He seemed to understand why Chu Si-yuan liked Shen Muan so much. Because, this is a person to like.